What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of My Unapologetic Perspective here on the Mighty Motivation Network, where we give our point of view of controversial topics from experience, history, and knowledge as African Americans. We appreciate everybody that has been tuning in to the previous episodes, everybody that's hit the like button, the share button, everybody that has subscribed to the YouTube channel, everybody that has entered private conversations with us and tell us how much they love the episodes. We are very appreciative of everything that we get, whether it's 50, 60, 70 people watching or 10, 20 people watching or 1 or 2 people watching. We're happy to be able to give out information, especially in this pivotal time here in America. But I am your host, Martre Stevens, and I'm joined by my other host. To the right of me is Shaquan Battle. To the right of him is Jerome Battle. And please hit the subscribe button on the Mighty Motivation Network on the YouTube channel. So today we got a special episode. It seems like every episode is a special episode because Black history is just so special. It's just so special, you know. It seems like the more we go into these conversations, the more it reveals how important African American people are in history, how much we have accomplished, and how much of it is not given the attention that it should be given.
That's right.
So this podcast, I know a lot of people say, you know, why is it always black this? Because this is a Black history podcast. For those who don't know, this podcast was started because after doing Black History Month speaking engagements and posts, I said it should be more than just this month that I'll be doing this. So Black History Every Day became my motto, and this podcast came to light of a lot of people who are unaware of Black history and unaware of the things that have been going on today that correlates with the treatment of Black people in history that lead to systematic oppression, that leads to racism, that leads to the things that we are faced with every day in this country. And today is no different because this topic is very important, and it goes back to show the history of America and why we're in the position that we're in now as African Americans, to say we deserve respect and honor and freedom, equality in this nation just as much as anybody else, if not more than anybody, because of what we have built in this nation has been built on our backs, with our hands, with our intellect, with our ancestors. So today, in honor of Memorial Day, when this episode drops, it'll be on Memorial Day. Thanks to all of the soldiers who have fought, thanks to all the soldiers who have enlisted, thanks to all of the soldiers who have served in America, not just in America, anybody that have served other countries, that have fought for their countries. Even though living in America, there are people who fought for their countries and they deserve the same respect. It's not just the red, white, and the blue. It's everybody who are protecting values, principles, and interests in human rights across the globe. So this is for you, for all of the soldiers who have sacrificed their lives. We love you. We honor you. And today we're here to talk about those African Americans who did so. How are y'all?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I want to say to my dad, Memorial Day, thank you for your service. My dad served in the Army back in the early 60s, early on in Vietnam War. Also to my oldest brother, Alvin, who served in the Navy. Also have 2 cousins, Antoine Odie and JT Odie, who served in the military, still serving today. Also Rodney Hurt, right. You guys' his cousin, serving in the military. So also I have a stepson who's serving in the military and a stepdaughter who just enlisted and graduates today. Congratulations to Maury Williams, graduating today from high school and to be going to the Air Force soon. So a lot of military history in my family. Hats off to them. And for people who think that when we don't, or I don't salute the flag, that I'm also disrespecting servicemen, no, not at all. Applaud the servicemen that serve this country and protect us, and also help give us the rights that we have to say what we want to say.
Exactly.
And also to acknowledge what we want to acknowledge and not acknowledge what we choose not to. So for those that believe that when you don't stand for the national anthem, you're disrespecting them, I say, no, we are not. No, I am not. So,
and I say anybody that doesn't agree with that, listen to this full episode. And once we get to the end of it, you'll understand why.
Absolutely.
You would definitely understand why.
Also, Kevin Staples, who served in the Iraq War. Julian Poindexter, who is currently serving now.
Oh, my nephew Cameron. Cameron served as well. Yeah.
Thanks to all of you guys. We love you. We appreciate you. We honor you. So y'all know what we're gonna do. I'll let you start. What we gonna do?
Chronology, baby.
We're gonna go through a chronology of history.
That's the next shirt.
We're gonna go through a chronology of history because you can't understand without going through the chronology.
Say it again, brother.
Chronology. We're going through a chronology of history. And I want to do this. I want to go by war. We're going to give information of African Americans in each war. And then later on, we're going to talk about significant people and events that happen in each war. But we're going to go through the wars first. We're not going to get to all of them because there's just so much. If we would do that, we would be here for hours, which I wouldn't mind, but I know people aren't going to tune in for hours. So you guys feel free to jump in anywhere when we're going through this. But the first war we're going to talk about is the Revolutionary War, of course. And in school, you were taught that the Revolutionary War was started because of taxation without representation, taxes going up, and the Boston Massacre happens, and the Revolutionary War starts because the crown was raising the taxes on the colonists, which is true, which is partly true. There are certain things. There are another situation that we like to talk about on this podcast that happened as well, which is with James Somerset. And what James Somerset was, he was a slave in. He was an enslaved African in America and was taken to Great Britain. And when he was taken to Great Britain, he ended up escaping and he was captured and they was going to send him to Jamaica back into slavery. And the people that he was that owned him in Great Britain said, you can't do that. Like you can't, there's no law that says you can be able to just capture this person and sell them. And it went to court and the magistrate or the judge at the time ruled in James Somerset's favor and said, you're completely right. They can't do that. And in the end, that Providence in England, not all of Great Britain, but that Providence in England outlawed slavery.
That's right.
Right. Not too long after the decision. So this passed on. The word got back to America and the colonists about this particular case. And they thought that Great Britain was going to try to free the slaves. And there was also tension going on in the colonists. People like the Quakers were saying that it was wrong to keep people enslaved while you're talking about you want freedom from Great Britain. That's a contradiction. You can't talk about freedom and still enslave people.
Absolutely.
So tension built up. And of course, the Revolutionary War starts. So in 1775, at least 10 to 15 black soldiers, including some slaves, fought against the British at the battles of Lexington and Bunker Hill. Two of these men, Salem Poor and Peter Salem, earned special distinction for their bravery. Now, George Washington, the people who championed, he did not want to put guns into black men's hands. I don't care if you were enslaved or free or not. He didn't want to put guns into their hands because another thing that was happening at this time was Great Britain was the soldiers that were on American soil. They were kind of agitating the slaves, like rebel. Y'all should rebel. Y'all should do this. Y'all should do that. And there were a lot of rebellions that happened during this time period. One happening in New York. That's why they call New York the city that burned so many times. But what ends up happening was George Washington was low on numbers and said, we have to start getting black people to join. And of course, about 5,000 to 8,000 blacks served the American cause. And then a lot of the ones enlisted in the South was not voluntary. So they came up with the rule that if a slave master didn't want to fight, he could send a slave in his position. Then they would compensate him for that slave. And then a lot of free men in the South were kind of made to fight. They really didn't have a choice. It's either fight, die, or go back into slavery.
You actually had some slaves who escaped and still chose to fight. Some escaped and ended up fighting for the British.
Oh yeah.
But obviously the blacks, it's documented that over 100,000 blacks fought or unaccounted for, which means they either died, escaped, or disease was something that a lot of slaves or blacks that fought in the Revolutionary War died from. But over 100,000.
Right. And a lot of them are unaccounted for because it was illegal for them to actually enlist.
Absolutely.
So a lot of them are unaccounted for. So, it was estimated about 20,000 fought for the British. And so a lot of them escaped and ended up fighting for the British because they were promised freedom. Absolutely. So the result was because a guy now the name of Lord Dunmore, the governor of Virginia. So one of the things that he did, he put out an ad in the paper and said, if you join us, we'll set you free.
That's right.
And blacks were escaping to join Great Britain. Many people that joined were kids. You're talking about 11, 12, 13-year-olds where they were just the drummers.
That's right.
And approximately about 20,000 black slaves joined the British during the American Revolution. But in the end, of course, we know America won. But in the end, at the sign of the Declaration of Independence, promising liberty for all men fell to in slavery.
It failed to include blacks.
It failed to include blacks.
Absolutely.
And even with the Promise of Freedom, there's only 8 slaves that are known to have been granted their freedom on both sides.
Absolutely.
So there's only paperwork for 8 people out of the thousands of people who signed up and promised the freedom by both sides.
That's right. So if you put this in perspective, if you go back and look at some of the earlier podcasts, we talked about this. We talked about the July 4th. We talked about Independence Day. We talked about how certain people believed that that was a war for slavery that happened years before the Civil War. I'm one of those people that believe that. If you look at how the information was passed down, the provenance from the Somerset case, and saying that it's actually documented that they were talking about outlawing slavery in all provinces of Great Britain, which would include America. That information got back to the United States through Benjamin Franklin and Samuel Adams and people of that nature. And the obviously George Washington had to do something. And so you say, okay, here's why. Just really quick, and I know we got a long line to go through, but let's get to the here's why.
Real quick. We'll take our time.
So when you look at the South and you look at money for the new America, right? Most of that money that was coming in terms of export and import was based on the textiles provided from the South, generated by no other than the black slaves. So the North was highly against it initially. However, the North was reaping the benefits because the North was flourishing. But without those textiles from the South, it doesn't happen for the country as a whole. So they say the only way we can do this is we have to preserve slavery. I don't care whether you agree with it or not. In order to keep that money, keep that wife looking like she's looking, keep that big house, you've got to have slaves.
Right.
And the only way to do that is we have to fight.
Right.
So obviously taxation without representation is what you hear about in school because they were being taxed and there was no representation. That's happening today. Nobody crying about it today, right? So what it was really about was the fact that we need to continue to be able to create this money. In order to do that, we need slaves.
And that leads us into the next war, which is the War of 1812. And one thing we have to remember from the Revolutionary War to the War of 1812 is what he just said is the South with slavery. So we have to understand that 3 of the first 4 presidents or 4 of the first 5 come right out of Virginia.
That's right.
So they wanted slavery. When you talk about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, the one that didn't come out of was John Adams, which was considered a Federalist, which he wanted a strong central government. And he was for, after the Revolutionary War, continue to connect with Great Britain.
And just real quick, too, John Adams was also a prosecutor. He was a lawyer who actually defended the individuals who were responsible for firing the first shots of the Revolutionary War that killed Crispus Attucks, who was the first person killed in the Revolutionary War who happens to be black.
Right.
And he defended those guys in court saying that Crispus Attucks was at fault when really he wasn't. There was another guy who actually was a brawler who was getting in fights with the British soldiers all week. And then doing this little party thing, he was one of the people who started a fight. Yeah. Somebody accidentally fired a shot, and that shot ricocheted and hit Crispus Attucks and killed him. You know. So
he was considered to be pro Great Britain, which went a lot away from the Southern presidents that came before him.
That's right.
But the War of 1812 is a forgotten war in the past, and a lot of people don't talk about the War of 1812. But it was basically about trade. So after the Revolutionary War, Great Britain don't leave what we call American soil today. They go into the Northwest where the Native Americans are, and they stay there. And then the French Revolution happens, and the Anglo-French War happens as well between Great Britain and France, because France wanted, they were displeased with the European king as well, the European crown as well. So the stance in America was, when John Adams was president, is we should stay out of it. And then comes Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and they basically want to intervene because France helped during the Revolutionary War. They said we should have France's back out of anybody because they held us down.
That's right.
But what ended up happening was America benefited from those two fighting because their trade went up. So Great Britain accused them and said, you only want us fighting because your trade goes up and your money goes up whenever we're not at peace. And whenever they was at peace, America's trade went down and money began to go down.
Sounds familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. So what ends up happening was Great Britain and France, they're in a war, and France has America pick up their trade, bring it back to America, and then take it down to the West Indies where they are, and said that they were just getting their stuff. And Great Britain said, you can't do that. This is where we own the water. So if we don't own the water, then we can't win with France. And they were bypassing ships for France and saying that, no, this is our trade, when really it was stuff for France. And Great Britain said, you know what, this is gonna stop. If we see y'all and we see y'all have stuff on your ship, we season the ship. And France said, well, if we see them having stuff with y'all, we're going to seize their ship. And this went on for a little while. And then finally France said, you know what? We'll open up trade again with U.S. And then Great Britain said, you know what? We're done with that. War on y'all too. Since y'all don't want to stop trading with the enemy, war on y'all too. And African Americans was used as soldiers again, by Americans and by the British.
That's right.
Again, the British put out, if you want to be free, we'll take you to the West Indies. We'll take you to London. We'll take you into Canada. Just get to us and fight for us.
That's right.
And estimated about 3,000 to 5,000 slaves from Maryland and Virginia fled to the British.
With the war in 1812, black soldiers were initially paid $10 per month.
That's right.
Which was $3 automatically deducted from their pay for clothing. So their net pay was $7.
Right.
And in contrast to the white soldiers was paid $13 per month with no clothing allowance deducted from theirs.
Exactly. So, you know, all the fugitives. So remember, during this time period, when they say we can take you to Canada, West Indies, we can take you to London. Remember James Somersault case, and now the UK has abolished slavery in 1807. Also remember, this is a few years after the Haitian Revolution, which was against who? Great Britain and France for Haiti to gain their independence. So that area was free as well. So the British were right. They could take them to some places where they could be free. And then America, again, James Monroe promised black soldiers freedom, land, and money. And at least 600 African American troops effectively aided Jackson in inflicting the worst defeat the British suffered in 1814. And about 2,000 black troops were a part of the fight.
Yeah,
but
that
in
was
the end,
the free men of color, 1814.
free men of color.
Free men of color.
And at the end of it, James Monroe demonstrated that African American soldiers had not altered his racial prejudice, and later reported that the inclusion of free blacks have been a choice between having them in our ranks or in the ranks of our enemy, and didn't go with the promise that he had gave them. So again, for the first two wars, we're fighting for freedom, pretty much.
That's right.
And whoever gonna give it to us, we don't care which one, whichever one you want to give it to us, we'll fight for you.
I thought one important thing for me was for the War of 1812, African Americans served in the Navy as seamen. And also most African Americans were assigned to tough jobs, which was like building the trenches and stuff like that. So basically still a slave.
As you're gonna see as we go through the rest of these wars.
That's right.
Ain't nothing gonna change.
We're
gonna take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. And we are back again. Subscribe on the Mighty Motivation Network on the YouTube channel. Let's jump right back in.
Absolutely. Just to piggyback off what we were talking about, War 1812, part of what gets lost in the War 1812 is what happened in 1814. The War 1812 went from 1812 to 1815. In 1814, you have free men of color who also fought. These are black soldiers who fought in battle, basically of New Orleans. Slaves as well as free soldiers constructed forts around the city in preparation for impending British invasion. Actually, the British underestimated them because they were black. Actually said so. They blacks, man. We can handle them. Yeah, it didn't work out that way. Did not work out that way. So obviously, this is how you end up with Louisiana as it is today, is because of the War 1812 and what happened in 1814 with the free men of color as they migrated down towards Louisiana through North Carolina.
Right. And when you talk about Louisiana, again, brief history, when you talk about Louisiana, New Orleans area, you're talking about an area of blacks, Native Americans. So free men of color were considered different shades of color. So mulattoes, dark skin, light skin, because of that Native American and African presence right there in Louisiana.
That's right.
And those free men of color also fought in the Mexican American War.
Absolutely.
As well.
Mulatto is mixed, right?
Mulatto was mixed.
That's right.
Y'all got anything else on the Mexican American War?
You good. Good.
But they did fight in the Mexican American War for the annexation of Texas. That leads us to the Civil War. Now, the Civil War happens, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. All persons held as slaves within any states in a rebellion against the United States, it declared shall be thenceforth and forever free. It is also declared that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed services of the United States. For the first time, black soldiers could fight for the U.S. Army. Now, Lincoln was still afraid to allow black soldiers.
The word is funny. You said they now can fight in.
Yes, even though
after we already did.
They've been fighting.
We already did.
Right?
Yeah.
And then Lincoln still was scared. I don't want to put guns into the hands of black people. This scared the hell out of people.
And that was another thing that I found funny. I remember when, what was it, last year or a year before last, when they was talking about taking away the rights to bear arms. And you seen the uproar of people, saying that, that they wanted to keep it. They shouldn't do this. I mean, even still now. And back then, African Americans you could fight in the war, but when you came back home,
get that gun up.
You couldn't carry it.
We're going to definitely get into that. Hold that thought.
But even if you go back to future previous podcasts where we talked about the Black Panthers, go all the way back to California, Oakland, California, when the brothers were showing up with the weapons, just like you see today.
Right.
Ronald Reagan, who was the governor at the time, said, "Oh no."
But you also have to understand that the Black Panthers, a lot of them served in these wars.
That's right.
But we're gonna get to that. But of course, and the reason why Lincoln didn't want to arm black soldiers is because of the loyal border states.
That's right.
He didn't want to scare the loyal border states to say, you know what, they putting guns in black people's hands. No, we're going to side with the Confederates. So black people took their own cue and formed their own infantry units. African Americans from New Orleans formed 3 National Guard units, the 1st and 2nd, 3rd Louisiana Native Guard. The 1st Kansas Colored Infantry, later the 79th United States Colored Infantry, fought in 1862. At the 1st South Carolina Infantry, African descent, the 33rd United States Colored Infantry went on its first expedition in 1862. These unofficial regiments were officially mustered into service in 1863. So unofficially, black people started joining on their own behalf.
That's right.
Without being enlisted. So 1863, Governor John A. Andrew of Massachusetts issued the civil rights' first official call for black soldiers. More than 1,000 men responded. They formed the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, the first regiment to be raised in the North. We're going to get to them in a little bit on their greatness. But Confederate President Jefferson Davis called the Emancipation Proclamation the most expressible, measurable of the history of a guilty man, and promised the black prisoners of war would be enslaved or executed on the spot. Now, this was key because a lot of black people they were tried to be scared out of joining the war because they said, if we catch you, we killing you.
We killing you.
We ain't no really taking you as no prisoner. Ain't no really doing that. We're catching you. We're probably hanging you.
And not just the blacks, but they're also talking about the leaders.
Yeah,
the white
leaders
of the black infantry.
So that's why a lot of white lieutenants or colonels didn't want to lead the black regiments because it put them more at risk.
That's right.
And if you're captured just as a white soldier,
you treat it a little different.
Yeah, but when you got these black people with you with guns.
Oh yeah,
nah, you getting hung with them.
That's right.
So African American soldiers was placed in segregated units, few of which saw action in battle, and their regiments were commanded by white men. Only a handful of African Americans archived in the officer's rank. Most black troops were put on guard duty or asked to build forts. If you look about rank, again, watch the movie Glory. Morgan Freeman in that movie gets rank. Because they tended to be in camps, these men were far greater risk of contacting the disease than were the troops on the march. As a result, nearly 3/4 of the 40,000 African-American soldiers who died in the war succumbed to either disease or infection rather than battle wounds.
That's right.
So the Confederacy also used black people. They used slaves.
That's right.
They said, you know what? Y'all can do the manual labor. So
give them a shovel.
Yep.
Dig the trenches. Carry the bullets.
You talked about
guns.
the pay earlier. Again, the pay was similar. The U.S. Army paid black soldiers $10 a week, minus the clothing. White soldiers got $3 more. Congress paid a bill authorizing equal black pay and white soldiers in 1864.
But that happened because, and this is the part about the Glory movie that people got to remember is, if you men will take no pay, neither will we. Right? So without that stance, without blacks taking that stance, doesn't change that either.
180,000 African Americans participated in the U.S. Civil War, comprising 163 units served in the Union Army and Navy. Black women also began to gain acceptance into the military by assisting with services such as nursing or domestic chores in medical settings, laundering, and cooking for soldiers. 16 black soldiers won the Congressional Medal of Honor for their brave service in the Civil War. African Americans participated in different fights. 25 black men were awarded the Medal of Honor for their bravery, and approximately 20% of all African Americans enrolled in the military lost their lives during the Civil War. Notably, their mortality rate was significantly higher than of white soldiers. That is the Civil War. Anything else on the Civil War? What y'all think about that?
I guess we're gonna get to the 54th.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the people. We'll get to the people.
All right. We can get to the 54th because I think it's important to we talk about Tuskegee Airmen a lot. Okay, I think you see movies about them. I think Glory was an excellent movie about the 54th, but I don't think people really understand the importance of the 54th. And I think us talking about that a little more is going to be. It's going to be important.
We're going to get into it. We're going to get all into that. World War I. 700,000 African Americans has registered for the military service. They were barred from the Marines and served only in menial roles in the Navy. Blacks were able to serve on all branches of the Army except for aviation units. In previous wars, they fought for freedom. In World War I, they fought for respect. So Civil War, Revolutionary War, War of 1812, they fought for their freedom. And then in World War One, they was like, you know what, we're going to fight for our respect.
That's right.
And that way, so we can be treated here differently. And W.E.B. Du Bois actually campaigned this. He campaigned for black soldiers to go fight in World War One. So he said, now they can start to respect you after you fight for them in the war.
At least that's what we thought. That's what we thought.
So we go over to Europe and we introduce Europe to jazz music. That's right. So of course they had us playing music. They had us dancing and being entertainment. But again, segregation was enforced during World War I. Even when integrated into fairly progressive camps, black soldiers were often treated badly and sometimes for long periods without proper clothing. There were also reports of blacks receiving old Civil War uniforms and being forced to sleep outside in pitched tents instead of warmer, sturdier barracks. And even in World War I, when they are dispatched into Europe, they're there to dig trenches, wash clothes,
Still a slave.
do the slave
except
stuff.
for one group.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Called the Hellfighters.
We're gonna get into the Hellfighters.
Yeah.
Most African Americans units did not see combat. The 92nd and 93rd Division also went to France, and they actually did see combat, which we're gonna get into the 92nd and the 93rd. But the key thing that happens in World War I, y'all, is the Hellfighters specifically, which we're gonna get into, were under French command.
That's right.
So France came to United States and said, hey, we need a unit. And they gave them the Hellfighters. But they found out that they were treated equally. France loved the black soldiers. The black soldiers loved the French.
That's right. There's a lot of movies that show that.
Yeah.
Where the black soldiers were treated entirely different in France. Even in Germany, even in parts of Germany, black soldiers were treated very different than how blacks in general were treated in the United States.
But a lot of them didn't even want to come back to the United States.
A lot of them did not.
Yeah. But of course, their main job over there, other than the Hellfighters and a few other groups, was digging trenches and burying bodies in World War I. But World War I was still the segregated place. World War II, nothing else changed. So everyone was in depression around the world. The Treaty of Versailles, in which Germany was blamed for World War I, in which they had to pay reparations, but Hitler rose and promised Germany back to power, and America wanted to stay out of it. But Japan dropped bombs on Pearl Harbor.
It was on.
It was on from on. So now America is going to war for democracy. Meanwhile, there ain't no democracy in America.
That's right.
But what do African Americans say?
We fight.
We going.
We fight.
If you ain't get it in World War I, we're going to show you in World War II.
What Red Tail say? We fight.
We fight. And so they sign up again and they go fight. And blacks went from fighting racism at home to fighting it abroad. So during World War II, more than 2.5 million African Americans registered for the draft. Registered. And African American women volunteered by large numbers. When combined with black women in the Army Corps, more than 1 million African Americans served in the Army during this war.
That's when we get the 78th. You get the 78th in 1941. The first black armor unit.
Yep.
They got to play with tanks, baby. They got to play with tanks.
But Jim Crow was still in order.
Still in order in the United States, but we had tanks.
Yeah.
We had tanks.
You had the 92nd Buffalo Soldiers, the 93rd Blue Helmets. All the black divisions were activated and sent abroad under the command of white officers. The Buffalo Soldiers did great things. We're going to talk about them a little bit.
Absolutely.
Despite these concessions, 90% of black troops were forced to serve in labor and supply units. Again, you're going over there, but labor supply units rather than being in combat. And again, if you watch these movies, you'll see black people anxious to fight. They wanted to fight. Except for a few short weeks during the Battle of Bruges in the winter of 1944, when commanders were desperate for manpower. All U.S. soldiers served in strictly segregated units. Even the blood banks were segregated. About 1/3 of the leaders in the civil rights movement were veterans of World War II. The veterans of World War II and the Korea War became the foot soldiers of the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 1960s, including people like Medgar Evers, Amzie Moore, Hosea Williams, and Aaron Henry are some of the better known ones. Over 600,000. Let's stop it there. World War II. What are y'all thoughts?
You want to go?
No, you got it.
I'm going to bring up something that a lot of people probably don't know. The concept of Black Panther came from World War I. There was a group of blacks that they called the Black Panthers. And they actually released a movie during the war in Europe called The Black Panthers, which is phenomenal. 1944, they released a movie. And this group was doing their thing over there to the point that the general, what was the Patton?
General Patton.
Yeah, General Patton wanted to use them to do certain special ops because they was killing it. Obviously, the same thing happened with the Buffalo Soldiers. We're going to get into a little bit too. But actually, somebody I want to mention is Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers was awarded the Medal of Honor in 1944 for his actions with the Black Panthers in World War I.
Absolutely. Real briefly, and if Daddy, you want to touch on this more, I'll let you. But of the more 600,000 African Americans who served in the armed forces during the Korean War, it is estimated about more than 5,000 died in combat. The Korean War changed the face of American military. African Americans served side by side in the same units with service members of all races and were afforded the opportunity to lead in combat. And then after that, you had the Vietnam War, saw the highest proportion of African Americans serve in the American War. There were marked turnaround from the attitude in previous wars that black men were not fit for combat. During the Vietnam War, African Americans faced a much greater chance of being on the front line and consequently a much higher casualty rate. In 1965 alone, African Americans represented almost 25% of those killed in action. Any other thing on Vietnam War, Korea War?
Just after the Vietnam War, the number of blacks that continued to voluntarily enlist in the military rose.
And we are back. We're going to jump right back into historical people. Let's start with the Revolutionary War. You mentioned one earlier, Crispus Attucks, whom many historians credit as the first man to die for the rebellion, became a symbol of Black American patriotism and sacrifices. He was killed during the Boston Massacre. He was a man who escaped slavery and died a martyr. Crispus Attucks.
Go ahead, Slow. Who you got?
We're doing it by war or?
Yeah. You can do it by war if you want.
All right, because I was at the honoring units. Is we that far yet, or?
What unit is it?
The 1st Rhode Island Regiment.
Okay, yeah, that's here. That's here.
So the 1st Rhode Island Regiment was 88 slaves enlisted. More likely, they was forced to be enlisted. The regiment also had free African Americans join the ranks.
And they were praised for their success against attacks in the Battle of Newport, saying they displayed desperate valor in repelling 3 furious infantry assaults. When the Rhode Islanders journeyed to Virginia, when several thousand other soldiers were assembling, they stood out. According to the French military officer, they were the most neatly dressed, the best under arms, and the most precise in all maneuvers.
As always, baby, we know how to dress.
So that was the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. Anybody in the Revolutionary War?
Crispus Attucks. There was another black guy that got shot during that war too. Actually during that first battle that ended up being a serviceman for many, many years after that, but I can't remember his name. I'll find it.
I got Salem Poor, a former slave that purchased his own freedom. 14 soldiers recognized his excellent battle skills with the petition to the General Court of Massachusetts. In it, they called him out as a brave and gallant soldier, saying he behaved like an experienced officer. Poor is credited in that battle with killing British Lieutenant Colonel James Abercrombie, along with several other enemy soldiers. You also had James Armstead, went from an enslaved person in Virginia to a double agent, passing intel and misinformation between the two warring sides. When Armstead joined the Patriot efforts, they assigned him to infiltrate the enemy, so he pretended to be a runaway slave wanting to serve the crown and was welcomed by the British with open arms as they assigned him menial support tasks, but he soon became a more strategic resource due to his vast knowledge of the local terrain. Armstead role got more interesting when the British directed him to spy on the Patriots. Since his loyalty remained with the colonists, he claimed to be bringing the British intel about the Continental Army, but he was actually pushing incorrect information to fool their plans. If you ever watched George Washington's Spies, what's the show called? Turn.
Turn.
A lot of this information is based off of that as well.
I wanted to read something from that war. It said the average length of time in service for an African-American soldier was 4.5 years, which was 8 times longer than the average period for white soldiers. Meaning that while there were only 4% of the manpower, they made up around a quarter of the Patriot strength in terms of man hours.
You know why? There was nothing waiting on the black man out of the military. There was nothing waiting for him but racism.
Right.
Of course, white Americans had a whole lot waiting for them on the other side. They had job opportunities.
So you rather stay and fight because
stay and fight. There's nothing waiting for you. We ain't got nothing for you, brother. You know.
Anybody else on the Revolutionary War?
Let's talk about the first black American to fight in the Marines, John Martin, also known as Keto, was a slave recruited April 1776 with his owner's permission, and he fought in the Marines, the first black to do so.
Wow. Amazing. War of 1812, there's one I have, which was Frederick Hall was born on a plantation. An ad was put in the paper after he escaped slavery, and he changed his name to William Williams, and as he enlisted as a private in the 38th U.S. Infantry. Although it was not legal for the United States government to enlist slaves, recruitment quotas left many officers turning a blind eye to possible legal entanglements. Williams traveled with his unit to Fort McHenry on September 10th, 1814, 2 days before the British landed near Baltimore. He fought in the Battle of Baltimore on September 13th, but in infantry reports indicate that he was severely wounded, having his leg blown off by a cannonball. Williams was one of 4 official casualties of the Battle of Baltimore, later dying of his wounds in Baltimore Hospital. While many escaped slaves fought for the British during the War of 1812, some, like Williams, defended a home that they would never be a full citizen of. Shout out to Frederick Hall.
For me, and this blew my mind. I'm sure a lot of y'all watching this can tell. A lot of this stuff I learned sitting right here coming from these two. But when I read this, the sailors of 1812, it says many enlisted in the fledgling Navy with American privateers where there was no time or space or manpower to discriminate like there was on land. It said leaders like Commodore Perry, Isaac Chauncey, they came out and said, I have nearly 50 blacks on this boat, and many of them are among the best men that I have. George Roberts, who served on that, said he was a seaman. He said, I found freedom as a simple sailor that did not exist on land. So he found more freedom in the water than he did on land.
Right. And if you look back at history, this is true because a lot of enslaved Africans or freed Africans found work on the ports or the docks or of boats. So when you talk about ships and being infatuated with ships, you're talking about Africans, Americans really going there to find work, and they really come in tune with sailing and different things like that, which is why the Navy is one of the places where African Americans enter first and really able to help the cause during the wars. Any more on War of 1812? Oh, we had that one.
That's for 1812.
All right, we're going to move on to the big one. I know y'all got some on the Civil War. Started with the one y'all love the most, Harriet Tubman. Was a spy and military leader. In 1863, she became the first and only woman to lead a military expedition during the Civil War to resounding success. Tubman led 150 soldiers on 3 federal gunboats up South Carolina's Combahee River for a surprise attack on the plantations of prominent secessionists. Using intelligence she gathered from enslaved Africans, people to bypass hidden Confederate torpedoes. Along the route, they stopped at several spots to rescue more than 700 enslaved people. So even after the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman was still freeing people and being a general and what she do best.
Go ahead, let you go.
I missed one. I don't mean to mess up your chronology, but the servants of the Mexican-American War in 1820, the Army, it barred all black men, free and enslaved, from enlisting. While this sometimes meant payment for the free men, that also meant being in harm's way, without a weapon, a chance of protecting yourself. It's reports that servants holding the reins of their master's horses while bullets was being flown by. They had to dodge cannonballs that was meant for officers that, most of the time while they were doing this, they died when the cannonballs and the bullets wasn't meant for them.
Sacrifice,
that's right.
For a country that would not sacrifice for you.
Once again, we that's going to be the theme.
And that's the theme.
That's the theme. You talk about the 54th. We talk about the 54th real quick. So when you watch the movie Glory, this is a really good visual of how things were, where blacks wanted to be a part of this. It's not like they were forced to be in. They wanted to be a part of it. Not only did they want to be a part of it, they wanted to fight.
Right.
Yeah. So they wanted to be a part, and they were enthusiastic about having the opportunity to fight. So they weren't running. They weren't scared. They weren't cowardice. They wanted to fight. But they also wanted to be treated equally. And we all remember, I think his name was Robert, the black guy who was friends with the lieutenant before this happened. Yeah. And he kept wanting to have that normal, casual conversation. And the lieutenant was like, I can't have that with you. Yeah. Not just because of rank, but because of you're black. And we're in a situation where I'm fighting against my brother right now. I can't have this kind of conversation. And Denzel would tease him about it. What you gonna do now? You gonna cry snowflake? Because he wasn't being accepted by the whites. Now, obviously, as the movie goes on, you see what Denzel, he's ridiculing the other blacks and how they're going about things, even called the other guy, Uncle Tom at one point, and he started realizing really quick that these are the people that I'm gonna be in trenches with. Mm-hmm. Here's the funny part. So are the white people. Yeah. They're going to be in the trenches with these guys. They need to be able to trust them and vice versa. Well, blacks had no problem with trusting the whites.
That's all the way around.
They had no problem with trusting the whites, but you got to trust me in order to go into this war. Mm-hmm. We said on the podcast before, where this kind of war divided brothers, but united unlikely friends. Yeah. But after the war, guess what? Same old, same old. Right. So we can go to war. We can go to war with you. We can fight for this country.
You trust me here.
You trust me here to have your back. You shake my hand. You hug me. You give me bullets. We eat together. We use the bathroom in the trenches together. And then when it's all over, all done, I can't even come in your neighborhood. Yeah. I can't work at the store that you work at. I can't even come in the front door. Yeah. I got to come around the back. So at the end of the day, when you watch this movie, that's a greater visual of what happened then.
It still happens.
It still happens today. That's what drives me crazy.
Right. It's always back to reality.
It's always back. And I know a lot of people, when you hear this a lot, everything's not black and white. Now, first I'm going to say, you don't normally hear black people say that. Yeah. Right? Black people don't normally make that statement. Here's the other thing. It's not always black and white. Sometimes there's color. Yeah. Sometimes there's color. That's us.
That's it. Okay. That's it. That's it. Alexander Augusta, with discrimination blocking his dreams of becoming a doctor in the United States, Alexander Augusta moved to Canada to earn his medical degree before returning to serve as the Union Army's highest-ranking black officer during the Civil War. Baltimore surgeon Alexander Augusta was a senior surgeon with white assistant surgeons under his command at Fort Stanton, Maryland. Robert Smalls, an escaped slave, was given a rank of captain of the steamer Planter in December 1864. As the Civil War broke out, he became a deckhand on the Confederate supply ship the planner and learn how to navigate between ports. Between dawn on the May 13th, 1862, as white officers and the crew slept, he slipped the planner out of Charleston Harbor with 8 men, 5 women, and 3 children on board, chugging quietly from slavery toward freedom. Ready to blow up the ship if caught, Smalls give the right signals to pass 5 checkpoints, including Fort Sumter. And once in open waters, he raised a white bed sheet and surrendered to the Union Navy blockade. He handed over the craft's guns and ammunition, as well as documents detailing Confederate shipping routes, departure schedules, and mine locations. Robert Smalls, who later on became a politician. I don't know if it was a senator or what of South Carolina.
Okay. I'm gonna say a name, and this is gonna shock some people because we at least I know I badgered him a little bit on this podcast is President Lincoln. He did something that I thought was critical, and that after the war, that in the midst, almost near the end of the war, is he was really big on trying to help provide equal pay to black soldiers. That's one, but two, he wanted equal protection for black POWs because he obviously knew that any blacks that were being captured was definitely going to be treated worse than the slave. And obviously he knew how bad slaves were being treated. So he did want to provide equal pay and equal protection for black soldiers. So, as much as I may talk negative about Abraham Lincoln, that is one thing that I think that he did that was of his own accord. Everything else was political. I don't believe this was political. In my opinion, I think this is something that he felt should be done because of their sacrifice. Also, it happened on the heels that some black captives were taken by a Confederate group, and soldiers shot to death the black Union soldiers. Fort Pillow, Tennessee. And as some people may know too on this podcast, I'm not very fond of the state of Tennessee. And it's because of things like this. And that was 1864. Confederate General Nathan B. Forrest, he witnessed the massacre and did nothing to stop it.
Right.
So again, you have black soldiers fighting for what they thought was the cause of the United States, and then get captured and treated worse than a slave. And, I just find that appalling that here you have people risking their lives the same as you, and then they get treated that way. Once again, everything's not black and white. Sometimes there's color.
I like that saying.
You got anybody?
Just Susie King Taylor, who was known for being the first black nurse and a teacher in the American Civil War. She was the nursing for the wounded for the 1st South Carolina Infantry Regiment.
The Kansas-colored infantry. African-American soldiers are the first Kansas-colored infantry, is one of the first engagements involving black troops. They silenced their critics by repulsing and attacking Confederate guerrillas at the skirmish at Allen Mound, Missouri, in the Western Theater. There's also at the Battle of Port Hudson, Louisiana, May 27, 1863. The African-American soldiers bravely advanced over open ground in the face of deadly artillery fire. Although the attack failed, the black soldiers proved their capability to withstand the heat of battle. I said these two for instance, for a reason. Imagine being at war and your death is to prove that you deserve to be at war. That's what they were facing.
That's right.
So a lot of these black soldiers expected to die, to be killed, because they were proving that we can fight. Even if you look at the movie Glory.
That's right.
That was a suicide mission.
Exactly. You expect to die.
They expected to die, but it was to say, if we do this, and we're going to fail, we're going to die, it's going to open up conversations for the people coming after us.
That's right.
That's what makes this podcast what it is. Because every episode, we talk about the sacrifices that people made for the people that's coming behind them. And as you see, the Civil War was really the turn of events that allowed more soldiers to come in World War I, World War II. It's because of the brave soldiers from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War that sacrificed themselves knowing that they weren't going to survive, especially in the Civil War.
That's right.
Because they were sent on what they considered dummy missions.
That's right.
And accomplished so much. So when you look at the 54th, they accomplished so much. Even if you look at the Battle of Chafin Farm in Virginia, it became one of the most heroic engagements involving black troops. The African-American division of the 18th Corps after being pinned down by Confederate artillery fire for over 30 minutes, charged the earthworks and rushed up the slopes of the heights. During the hour-long engagement, the division suffered tremendous casualties. Of the 25 African-American who were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor during the Civil War, 14 received the honor as a result of their actions at Chafin's Farm. So again, you're talking about a dummy mission. You're talking about suicide missions.
I'm going to give you this is going to be an odd one. This is Colonel Ty.
Oh, I hate him.
The most noteworthy black loyalist. And obviously, for the people who want to know the different sides, the loyalists are people who sided with British in the Revolutionary War. And why I'm going to him is because two of the people that you mentioned, Peter Salem and Salem Poor, which are the most noted African American patriots. Right. Obviously, they fought for the colonists.
But Colonel Ty was on the
exactly.
Right.
So, but what Colonel Ty tried to do is, he tried to communicate to Peter Salem and Salem Poor during the war and tell them, you guys are on the wrong side. You guys think, and again, go back to what we said at the beginning about why the Revolutionary War was really fought. He was telling them, you think you're fighting for freedom. You are not. You think you're fighting for independence from Great Britain. You are, but we're the ones that's protecting you, that's trying to protect you and rid you of slavery.
Right.
They did not buy it. They believed America was fighting for the freedom and independence for all, not just white people. They were sadly mistaken. But Colonel Ty tried to convince them of that. Obviously, there's going to be a movie about this soon because they were talking about this. And when you talk about Turn, when Turn first came out, and even what was the other one with Paul Revere and Benedict Arnold? I can't think of the name of it, but it was similar to Turn. But they've been talking about doing something regarding how black people were misled and how other blacks that was fighting for the British was trying to tell them, you're on the wrong side, Jack. And they didn't find that out until the war was over. But obviously, I thought that was critical because he tried to tell them that they were on the wrong side.
Absolutely. But Colonel, if you don't know who Colonel Ty was, he was a soldier that basically led a lot of raids in the New Jersey area, gathering, taking away the Patriot supplies and different things.
That's right.
When you talk about New Jersey, New York, remember George Washington ends up having to leave New York because Great Britain's stance is so strong in New York. So again, the great city that burned, New York. But a lot of that had to do with those type of things. Anybody else on the Civil War?
I think we killed it.
All right. Moving on to, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. And we are back. Again, subscribe on the YouTube channel, the Mighty Motivation Network on YouTube. Subscribe on the YouTube, Mighty Motivation Network. We're going to move forward. We're going to continue on talking about great people. World War I, I got Henry Johnson. So what happened with Henry Johnson was there was a racist journalist by the name of Irvin Cobb who wrote about the experiences that was going on in World War I, and he was known for writing racist stuff about African-American soldiers until he heard about Henry Johnson's heroic battle. And after that, he started writing nothing but praise about African-American soldiers, and it changed his mindset on a lot of racist things that he had in his head. But what Henry Johnson did, he fought off German raid in hand-to-hand combat, killing multiple German soldiers and rescuing a fellow soldier while experiencing 21 wounds. Johnson was recognized by the French with a Croix de Guerre with the Star and Bronze Palm. It was the first United States soldier in World War I to receive the honor. He didn't receive the Medal of Honor until Obama was president in 2015. Imagine that.
World War I. Dr. Lewis Tompkins Wright, son of a man born into slavery, graduated from Harvard University School of Medicine with honors, was commissioned as the first lieutenant in the medical section of the U.S. Army Officers Reserve Corps. He rose to rank in lieutenant during the World War I.
Goodness. Got anybody going?
I don't.
All right. So there was 104 African-American medical doctors who volunteered to serve during World War I. They were assigned to care for wounded and sick in all black units of the 92nd and 93rd Divisions. Most of these men graduated from the 3 black colleges that specialized in training medical professions. One of these people happened to be a guy by the name of First Lieutenant Reuben Francis Bass, class of 1906. Under heavy German fire, the Richmond, Virginia native made the ultimate sacrifice while aiding wounded soldiers of the 93rd Division of all black infantry in France. Lieutenant Bass went into the line so he could provide immediate aid to the wounded when a shell blasted in the forward aid station he was been working in. The explosion severed both of his legs around the thigh region. With not many attendants around, Lieutenant Bass died in minutes. We thank you for your bravery as a medical doctor and your sacrifice.
I'm going to go General John J. Pershing, part of the Harlem Hellfighters.
Ooh, there we go. Let's go into them.
The first all-black U.S. combat unit to be shipped overseas during World War I. And there was a incident, a violent racial incident that happened in Spartanburg, South Carolina. For those that don't know, I'm not particularly a fan of South Carolina either. And so the unit was planning to avenge the physical attack of their drum major, Noble Sissel. There was no official combat role at this time for the American black soldiers. John Pershing responded to France's request for troops by assigning the 369th and the 93rd Division, other regiments, to the French army. The Germans dubbed the unit the Hellfighters.
The Hellfighters.
Because during 191 days of duty at the front,
for sure,
no men were captured, no people taken on the ground. However, almost 1/3 of the unit died in combat. The Hellfighters.
So 1/3 died in combat, but also understand this. When they returned back to America, again, remember, the United States put out a memo to the French that said, do not treat black soldiers equally because when they come home, they're going to...
Yes, be a rude awakening.
So when the Harlem Hellfighters return home, again, the name Harlem Hellfighters ain't going to sit well with white folks at home.
That's right.
And one of the things that happened was a bunch of white people went up to these soldiers and told them to take their uniform off.
That's right.
They refused. 77 black men were lynched, including servicemen that were still in their uniform. And this sparked the Red Summer.
Absolutely.
So just think about on the front lines fighting for 191 days to return home only to be killed.
Absolutely. You know, and as we're reading this and we're going through the chronology and I'm looking at the years, and I know we don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I can't help it. I can't help but to think about it because we're talking 1917, 1918. And while we're at 1918, I'll go ahead and mention Freddie Storrs, cited for the Medal of Honor for his actions at Hill 188 Champagne Marine sector in France in 1918. So I want to mention that. But as we approach 1920 and 1921, and Bake, you know where I'm going with this because you know what happened in 1920, 1921.
Hall?
No, Tulsa.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, absolutely. Celebrating the 100 years.
Exactly. And see, I have to mention it because it happened the weekend on Memorial Day in 1920, 1921.
Yeah.
And for those that don't understand what I'm getting at, give me a second. We're going to get there. We're talking about wars. We're talking about the contribution that blacks made to military and war. But we're also talking about the contribution and the sacrifice and the suffrage much that blacks have endured for the sake of this country and at the hands of this country. So it's both. Right. So when we talk about at the hands of this country, we can't talk about war and sacrifice and suffrage in Black America and not talk about what happened in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. You cannot. We cannot. We would be doing a disservice if we did that. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll let Bake explain to you guys a little bit about what happened with what we call Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm. So what happens with Black Wall Street is African Americans in the area which we consider our own town.
Greenwood, Tulsa.
Greenwood, Tulsa. Because, of course, in the South, you had what they called across the train tracks.
That's right.
So across the train tracks would be white and black. They were separated by neighborhoods. So what happens in Tulsa, Oklahoma was black people began to flourish.
Thrive.
You're talking about your own businesses. You're talking about your own doctor's offices, own grocery stores, own buses. You're talking about black owned everything. And they begin to create more wealth than most white cities in America.
That's right.
But what ends up happening
recycling black dollars. That's exactly what we talk about. Recycling black dollars. Bringing
up the economic system.
That's right.
And what ends up happening is I believe it's a white woman who claimed that a black guy raped her.
Well, he made sexual advances to her on the elevator.
Made sexual advances to her on the elevator. And white people take this and they use the idea to go across into the black section and burn it down. Not only burn it down, there were bombs dropped. If you ever heard the song, They Dropped the Bomb on Me, that song is about Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That's right.
They literally dropped bombs like as if they were dropping Hiroshima in Japan.
Right. Turpentine balls. And for those that don't know what that is, turpentine balls, if you drop them into flames or if you inflame them before you drop them, they continue to burn. Mm-hmm. And there's footage, there's documentation where fires were burning on the roof of buildings. Mm-hmm. And the only way that happens is from those flames dropping them. Yep. And as Beck said, they basically went and maliciously attacked the black community. So when you talk about riots, so this is why all this is so huge. When you talk about rioting and destroying in businesses and actually murdering black people, there was over 30 black people that were killed during this time. At the end of it, over 100,000 blacks were displaced. Yeah. Businesses destroyed. The economy was gone for Greenwood. It was gone, totally wiped out. Livelihoods gone. For decades, gone. And white America did this. Yeah. This was white America rioting.
This wasn't the only place. You also had Wilmington, North Carolina.
That's right.
You also had Rosewood in Florida. You had the movie Rosewood captures this. There were a lot of black
thriving
towns.
Yeah,
black towns that were like this and that were thriving on their own businesses and their own properties.
And we talk about 1920. We're talking about 1920. During and right after World War I. Mm-hmm. Here we go again where we're fighting for this country, and yet we have to fight with this country. Mm-hmm. And it blows my mind. So we commend those that fight, but our fight is not over. And you don't have to put on a uniform to have this fight. You can get pulled over today and start the fight. Because
there's a war in our own backyard.
It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen until we do something about it. Mm-hmm. And it starts with these conversations. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm sick of having these conversations. Right. I am. I'm tired of having discussions only to have meetings to have more discussion. I'm sick of it.
Because nobody's listening.
But here's what I can't stop. Yeah. I have to continue to talk about it. That's all I can do.
And we have to continue to talk about it because all we're doing is talking about it. And this episode is important because we're talking about it. They fought for it. They died for it.
That's right.
So if all we got to do is talk about it, it's incumbent of us to do so.
Absolutely. And now we need you to do the same thing. Continue to talk about it. Continue to understand we deserve to be here. Yeah. See, nobody did us any favors. Okay. They didn't free us because they liked us. Okay. They didn't free us because they thought that slavery was wrong.
It was business.
It was business. But even after that, we deserve to be here. We built this country. And I know we don't want to get too deep in this, but I do want to mention Project 1619.
Sure.
And for those that don't know what that is, I'd like for you to take a Google Project 1619. And it'll talk about how they want to place blacks in America at a specific time. Mm-hmm. And then you want to say that America started in 1776 with independence, right? If that's the case, we were part of America before independence. Please stop treating us like you're doing us a favor.
Right.
Please stop treating us like we don't deserve to be here. If you deserve to be here, we damn sure enough deserve to be here. We want to be treated like that. We're not foreigners. You say, go back to Africa. You go back to Europe. We built this country. We deserve to be here.
Right.
What did you do?
Right.
We fought for this country. What did you do? And so if you did the same and you deserve to be here, so do we.
Right. And I quote James Baldwin, I picked the cotton. I built the railroad.
That's right.
We built this nation. It's on our backs.
Absolutely.
Say whatever you want to say. We built it and we stayed because it's ours.
It's ours.
Point blank, period.
We belong here. We belong here. For black people, I need you to start acting like we belong here. And for all the people listening, there's evidence that we were here before 1492 as well.
Just do your research on Christopher Columbus.
Do your research because it's important. And I talked to my dad this morning. I was telling you guys when I came in, I talked to my dad, and for people that don't know my dad has an abundance of wisdom and knowledge. I tell people all the time he is the smartest guy that I know, the smartest guy that I've ever met in my life.
Right.
But you have to engage him to get this information because he's not like us. He's just not going to come out, hey, let me tell you something. It ain't going to happen. You really have to engage him. And, and talking to my dad, some of the things that I've learned in just conversations with him is that people had an agenda even when they didn't understand that they had an agenda. So you had people that went and fought wars like we were talking about World War I and II. You go and you fight and you expect that you're going to be treated like France treated you when you were there, like Germany was going to treat you when you were there. And then you come back and you get spit on and you can't get jobs. Now, and you can't get any of those things.
Am I mistaken? But wasn't there an order put out that everybody had to return back to America because a lot of African Americans were going to stay in France?
Yeah, it was an order. The ones that didn't, of course, they went AWOL.
Right.
There was a lot of them that chose to go AWOL because the treatment was a lot better there. So it happened. Absolutely. But when we talk about 1619, and we talk about why this is important and why they teach you a certain narrative in school, this is what me and my dad talked about. It's because they wanted to teach white supremacy. Now, I know people think, that's not true. When we talk about white supremacy, we're talking about the white population, the white race being superior.
Right.
So you cannot talk about blacks in an equal conversation or narrative and have white stay superior. You can't do it.
Right.
So we can't teach that in school. One, we don't want to teach the white kids that because we want to teach them that they're better. We have to. And how do you do that? We have to teach whites that blacks had a certain place in history. And that place was slavery starting in 1619. They wasn't a part of the original framework of the United States. So let's say that's true. Then what does the Constitution mean to me?
Right.
If that's true.
Right.
What does it mean to me? So these are the kind of questions that have to be asked that Project 1619 talks about. Because as he said quietly, there's evidence that we were here as early as 1492.
Native Americans know this as well.
That's right. So we can talk about Columbus in 1494 if we want to. That's still 2 years after we were here, right? But you want to go, let's say document it, 1526.
Right.
Still is earlier than 1619 when you put us here. Okay? Now, this is not information that some black guy came up with. Okay? This is some information that white America has hidden from us. It's there. They wrote it. They found it. They documented it. But they don't teach it. Right? Why? Because you want to teach white is superior to blacks. And the only way to do that is I can't give you all that information. Mm-hmm. Guess what? I just gave it to you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Just gave it.
Exactly. When you think about the educational system, there's things left out to mislead as well.
Absolutely.
So that's why this episode, I want to do this episode, because even as a person who's seen African Americans serve, when you think about the military, you think about white soldiers.
That's right.
When you think about the American flag and you say you guys are kneeling for the flag, who are you guys?
That's right.
And what soldiers are you disrespecting? You're not talking about black soldiers that's in our family.
That's right.
You don't talk about that. You said there are people who died for this country. You're not talking about the African Americans. That's why we're doing this episode, so you can see that thousands and millions of people who died for this country were also African Americans who were not treated justly during the time period or even now. That's right. What they were fine. But I want to get to this in a second, but there is something brief I want to go in. World War II, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., son of Benjamin O. Davis Sr. Benjamin O. Davis Sr. has been the first African-American general in the Army, and Jr. served as a commander of the Tuskegee Airmen during the war, flew over 60 missions. Again, we talked about the Red Tails earlier. Where they gained a lot of respect from white soldiers because they rather had the red tails protecting us in the sky, because we know our planes is less likely to be shot down. So Benjamin Davis later went on to become the first African American general in the United States Air Force, in which the Harry S. Truman desegregation began to happen a lot because of what the Red Tails was able to do. And again, when you talk about the Red Tails, you're talking about people who didn't come up in military ranks. They were teachers. They were, just normal people who had to go to the Tuskegee Institute to learn how to fly and then perform these great missions.
Hey, real quick, I want to talk about military history and African Americans' effect on pop culture.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. The first time I saw this, I was like, "Do what?" But yeah, this was interesting. 1954, The Negro Soldier was based on Frank Capra, which was a recruit documentary on a black soldier being recruited. 1945, Wings for This Man, propaganda short about Tuskegee Airmen. That was 1945. Let's go 1951, The Steel Helmet, an early Samuel Fuller film about blacks and white soldiers fighting side by side in Korea, and racial tensions tightened by a redneck sergeant and a North Korean agitator. 1972, this one's huge for me. DC Comics. John Stewart, who I mentioned about being the first African-American Marine, sparked the Green Lantern, who is my favorite superhero, and I didn't know any of that. Didn't know any of that. My favorite superhero. Come on, man. Well, you can't make this up.
When we talk about DC Comics, that's a whole different episode of who some of those characters are based off of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, things like that blow me away. 2001 to 2005, JAG. Which was, I don't know if you guys remember, that's one of the shows I used to like to watch. Is military based, like the prosecutor of the military. And that's based on Peter Ulysses, played by Scott Lawrence, is an Afro-American Navy officer in the JAG TV series, former Marine officer who serves now as a lawyer in the JAG. So that was basically based on a black person. I didn't even know it, but that was, again, one of my favorite shows. There was nobody black in it.
Yeah.
But it was based on a black character. And I used to watch that show all the time. Loved it. Didn't even know it was based on somebody black. And then, of course, Red Tails. I can't get away from Red Tails. George Lucas. And obviously, everybody knows George Lucas from Star Wars. But George Lucas did Red Tails. I think Red Tails, in some degree, is on the same level as Glory.
You talking about the last movie they did, or you talking about the Tuskegee Airmen movie?
The 2012 version of Red Tails is as close to Glory as you can be in terms of war movies. And showing how blacks were treated. And I think that's huge because obviously, again, like we said in this podcast, we suffer through that in our personal lives. We enlist into the military and get treated like that some more. go to another country and fight where we don't get treated like that, only to come back to a country that we fought for to get treated like that again. It blows my mind. We are a people, a very prideful and hopeful people, because the only way you can do that is that you hope that it's going to get better.
Prideful and forgiving.
Prideful, forgiving, hopeful, resilient people to be able to do what we've done. So again, I say to all my brothers and sisters out there, be proud to be Black.
Right.
Because you have the pedigree to be great.
Right.
You have it. It's instilled in you. Just look at what we've done. Look at the chronology of what we've done, what we've overcame into where we are right now. Be proud to be Black.
Before we get more into conversation, there's a few names I want to list real quick, and then we'll take a quick commercial break. Phyllis Daly, first African-American woman sworn into the Navy Nurse Corps, was a Columbia University student from New York. She was the first of only 4 African-American women to serve as a Navy nurse during World War II. Edith DeVoe eventually became the first Black nurse to join the regular U.S. Navy ranks in January of 1948, and also the first to serve outside the continental United States. Doris Miller was the one who, after Pearl Harbor, took the aircraft gun and fired back at the Japanese.
That's right.
He had no training to do so, but it was like, yo, forget it. This is my
It's on the poppin'.
This is my opportunity. Let me go ahead and do what I got to do. But yeah, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back. We're just going to have conversation. And we are back. Thank everybody for tuning in. We're going to jump right in. I just want to have conversation for a second. Because when we begin to talk about this episode, you know, the first thing that come to my mind is the kneeling for the flag is disrespectful to the soldiers. And for me personally, of course, I 100% disagree with this. It's because Colin Kaepernick's kneeling for the flag, or anybody else that decided to sit for the flag, holding up the fist during the national anthem being played, whatever the case you may look at in history, I believe that our ancestors would agree with it. I believe that there are not a lot of Black people who would say that that's disrespectful to them, because for what they fought for was the right and opportunity to begin to do that. So when most people think, when white people say our people die for this country, they mostly talking about their family, but they're not understanding that African Americans have died for this country as well. Some ain't even had nothing to do with them, ain't even put the uniform on. They just died for the country.
Just died for the country.
What I'm saying?
That's right.
You just died for the right to try to be free. You died for the right to have the rights that you have in the country. Right. So you're talking about soldiers in the Army, in the Navy, in the Air Force, and just soldiers of what's right. And I believe that even if you look at the 24th, we didn't talk about the 24th Infantry, but if you look at Houston, when they were in Houston, they came across racial discrimination and worse. The cops would harass them, beat them, kill them, whatever. And they rebelled against it. Now, they were killed and hung for it, but even in uniform, they were still fighting for racial injustice.
That's right.
And I believe that we are doing the right thing. And I believe our ancestors were praised because they fought for the opportunity for us to do so.
Absolutely.
Without being killed for it. But even though we are being killed verbally for it. But
that's right. I'm going to read something. Once let the Black man get upon his person the brass letter, U.S. Let him get an eagle on his button and musket on his shoulder and bullets in his pockets. Mm-hmm. There is no power on earth that can deny that he has earned the right to citizenship. Mm-hmm. Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
And that's based on, just in part, the dedication, service that Black America put towards this country. So when we talk about get your eagle on, completely different.
Yeah.
We're talking about getting the eagle on your button, mm-hmm. serving this country that you are hopeful is going to treat you as a citizen, mm-hmm. which it did not. And in a lot of cases still does not. but yet we're still hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when I read words like that of Frederick Douglass, they already know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a guy who's writing this during the time.
Mm-hmm.
He already knows that no matter what, we're not going to be treated as citizens.
Mm-hmm.
The hope is that you've earned the right to be treated as a citizen. If that don't earn your right, if picking the cotton and you whooping me and we enduring the fact you're trading and selling our relatives and loved ones, if that don't earn the right, the hell does earn the right? What do we have to do to earn the right to be treated as a citizen? Tell us. I'm sure we'll do it. If we've already done everything else, what do we need to do to earn the citizenship?
When you think about the flag, I read this. It says the red in the flag is symbolic of hardiness and valor. We know African Americans represent that from what we faced in this country.
Absolutely.
The white symbolizes purity and innocence. And we know that has not been fulfilled.
That has not been fulfilled
by the people who we consider our forefathers.
Or this country.
Or the people who wave their flag every day.
That's right.
And the blue represents vigilance, perseverance, justice. Justice. So if you're fighting racial injustice, how can you be mad at somebody for kneeling for the flag when it's not being represented?
That's right.
So if justice is not being represented, how can you get mad at somebody for kneeling because there's injustice?
Absolutely.
That is a contradiction. So most people want us to wave our flags, just say the freedom of America. But what happens when it's not free for everybody? You know, you talked about different world earlier. You know, one of the things that he says was in that scene was, you're an immigrant. Your grandparents came over here and got all of this freedom. He said, my grandparents were born here. Yeah. They built this country. Right. And I have not gotten that justice.
That's right.
So you get a spoon in your mouth coming from somewhere else. Meanwhile, I get a whip across my back, even though I've built it. And justice has not been served and the flag has not been represented for freedom. Even when we fought, if you go back and listen to this episode, even when we fought in every war, every time there is a chance to say, hey, look, we're fighting. When y'all, let me get this out real quick. For the people who want me to wave my flag, shoot my fireworks, Pledge of Allegiance, national anthem.
That's right.
On 4th of July, do me a favor. Do me a huge favor. Juneteenth is coming up. Put on a Harriet Tubman shirt.
That's right.
Put on a Frederick Douglass shirt. Shoot your fireworks. Talk about Black history.
That's right.
Talk about these great men and great women that made sacrifices. If you do that, I'll shoot fireworks on the 4th of July. When you recognize our freedom, I'll recognize yours.
If you do that on Juneteenth, you won't do that on the 4th of July because you know that's a direct contradiction. So I will say that you will not do it on the 4th of July because you will understand at that point that the 4th of July does not represent independence for Black America. You will not.
So when we talk about Black history, you can't talk about no history. I don't care where you at on the globe without mentioning Black people.
That's right.
And what they gave to help on their own regard when nobody does that for them.
Absolutely.
Period. It's funny that we look at these wars, especially World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, Korean War, that America will help other countries fight for democracy, but will not listen to the people in their own backyard. They won't do it.
The people that they relied on, Go back to what we talked about regarding the Revolutionary War. Even more so when you talk about the Civil War. Needed bodies. They needed bodies. We got a whole lot of them. They're black.
Yeah.
Let's put them to work. You relied on us. Your textiles, your import export before the Revolutionary War. You relied on us to build these cities. You relied on us. But yet we get no justice. You can't even treat us like a citizen.
Nope. And we went through all of these lists of great people. And y'all expect me to walk by a Robert E. Lee statue and marvel? Get out of here. Care nothing about that dude. You know how many black soldiers were way better men and soldiers than he were?
They couldn't even be buried in the military cemetery. They can't even be buried there. They'd be buried somewhere else with a marker. I think Christmas Addicts was buried somewhere and it had Negro Man.
Yeah.
Negro Man on the tombstone. Can't even put the brother's name on there. You can't be in the cemetery with the other two people that got killed that day.
And you also had to look at, when we talk about those wars early on, that African Americans weren't allowed really to enlist, but they did so anyway, which means after their death, there was no benefits from it.
No benefits.
So even if you look at the Vietnam War, if you watch the movie Dear Presidents,
That's
just
right.
one. When you get back from the Vietnam War, a lot of African American soldiers were denied disability. And when you're denied disability, you can't find work. So they considered to do underground work in the one thing that they knew best, which was war. Because they went there fighting for their country. And if you look in that movie, when he gets sentenced, the judge says what? I also fought for this country.
Right.
Yeah, but you probably got disability. You probably had a job waiting for you when you got home.
That's right.
I didn't.
Nothing.
So I come home and fight for a country. He was proud to fight for his country. And when he got home, he realized ain't nothing changed.
Ain't nothing changed.
Matter of fact,
It
got worse.
It got worse.
It got worse.
Because they hated him for fighting in a war that's not even deemed a war, which is why he couldn't get disability.
Right.
Because they didn't deem it a war. You know, people tell the stories that when they came back from Vietnam and got off the plane, one, and my dad told me this morning, that for people that enlisted, they got to choose things about the military. Where you go, you can get an education, you can get a job, right, in the military. So you got to choose. If you got drafted, you was a soldier. So they give you a gun, teach you how to use it, send you to war. So you take 18, 19-year-old kids, give them a gun, put them out there in the field in a foreign country to do something that they have no idea what they're doing. Because who can tell you what the Vietnam War was even about, let alone an 18, 19-year-old kid. And then when the war is over, you bring him back. Now he's 22, 23. Let me get that gun up out you. Have a nice life. Right? No money, no benefits. And you get off the plane and they're spitting on you.
Yeah.
People who you thought you were fighting for, you come back, they despise you for fighting in a war that they said you shouldn't have been fighting in. But you were called to duty.
Yeah.
You were called to duty for this country, by this country. And then you get home and get treated like that by this country.
And you know the funny thing about all of these wars, the other countries would tell African American soldiers that go home.
This ain't your fight.
Your war.
This ain't
Go
your
home.
fight.
You know, the Germans would have a lady on the speakers saying, "Go home, black soldiers. Go home. Eat your food. Eat your chicken. Eat your mashed potatoes and greens with your family."
And if you didn't hear them, you should have heard Muhammad Ali. Viet Cong ain't never did nothing to me. You know, at the end of the day, he had more problems with white people than he did the Viet Cong.
So you think about what other countries was looking at like, wait a minute. They always saying that they treat it this way, but they over here fighting us with them. So just think about how loyal the black person is and how loyal in history we've always been.
And then look at us now. That's why we ain't got nothing now. That's why we ain't got nothing now.
Even if you look at the way the last soldier was just treated in the stop.
That's right.
That uniform don't mean nothing.
Don't mean nothing.
You're still black underneath it.
Exactly.
What I got from the earlier wars we had talked about was if you're captured, you're treated just as bad. You were returned to slavery or they killed you. I want to read something that I found. It says, most white Americans at this time thought black adults as children, lacking in mental ability and discipline. Slavery has stripped black men of their manhood, so the thinking went, making them dependent and irresponsible. These stereotypes led most whites to assume that a black man could never be trained to fight like a white soldier. But black soldiers were fighting for much more than restoring the Union. They were fighting for free. They were fighting for free to free their people in the war and to free their people back home. For me, it seems to be a never-ending cycle for African Americans fighting to break those stereotypes that I just mentioned, to be treated equally. We have we feel like we constantly have to fight to prove something. You know, we call it the N-word. Let's fight. Let me fight you to prove to you that I'm not that. We have to prove ourselves when it comes to jobs. If you look at old movies and the boss man was white, the first thing the black guy will say was, let me prove it to you.
That's right. That's right.
Even, let me prove to you that I'm not a criminal because I'm black. Let me prove to you that black men can be great fathers. The only place that we don't feel like we have to prove ourselves, which you can make a case that that's the reason why we're great at it, is sports.
That's right. But
we need to walk in how we feel like we don't need to prove ourselves in sports. We need to do that as judges, as lawyers, as doctors, because it's a constant, never-ending cycle that we feel like we have to fight to prove ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a mic drop.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a mic drop. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We love y'all. Remember to share the video, like the video, comment on the video. We love you guys. Peace.